As a woman of color, I have always received messages about the proper ways to display and express my sexuality in order to avoid the hypersexualization and other criticisms that women before me have faced and endured. The stereotypical image of an overly suggestive and sexually active Black woman seemed to be present in multiple spheres of my life. I was taught to avoid this characterization at all costs. As early as elementary school, I was given strictly defined sexual boundaries. Any behaviors or feelings that fell outside of these bounds had to be corrected. The fear of being labeled negatively made me police my own behavior. I saw a similar theme in Elaine Showalter's discussion about the ways in which Victorian women were treated in asylums. Psychiatrists specifically controlled and targeted female sexuality in order to control female minds. During this time, male physicians worked to cure female insanity through reducing their perceived uncontrolled sexuality. Because there was no place for female sexuality or satisfaction or desire within the Victorian respectability model. This model insisted that women were only allowed to occupy the boundaries of, as Showalter states, the ladylike values of silence, decorum, taste, service, piety, and gratitude. One of the ways that physicians worked to control female sexuality was through manipulating the female reproductive system. It was a widely held belief in the psychiatric community that menstruation was not only linked to sexual maturation, but also to wild, deviant sexual behavior. A woman during menstruation was said to be vicious and destructive, a prisoner to her reproductive cycle. In order to alleviate and prevent these sexually charged symptoms, physicians forced female patients to take cold showers, wear certain kinds of underwear, and remove meat from their diets. These various treatments were said to delay the start of menstruation. In addition to controlling sexuality in this way, male physicians also performed a variety of surgical procedures on female bodies to limit their sexual desires. Dr. Isaac Baker Brown's clitoridectomy and subsequent labia removal were the most common and effective. From 1859 to 1866, Dr. Brown performed these procedures. These methods, as Showalter puts it, were the surgical enforcement of an ideology that restricts female sexuality to reproduction. The clitoris is the only organ of the entire human anatomy that is entirely dedicated to sexual pleasure. This little bundle of nerves grants autonomous sexual satisfaction. Because of this, doctors quickly linked it and female masturbation to madness and uncontrolled behavior. By removing the clitoris, Dr. Brown believed that female patients would have more governance over themselves and stop their insanity from progressing further. The emphasis of controlling female sexuality to curb insanity was not only evident in the treatment that women received in asylums, but also in their diagnoses. Beginning in the middle to late 1800s, a new diagnosis surrounding female sexuality began to emerge: nymphomania. It is a mental disorder characterized by uncontrollable and excessive sexual desire in women. With this new medical label, male physicians furthered their crusade against female sexuality by asserting that the presence of female desire is something that is deviant and evidence of a sickness. This diagnosis was readily accepted because it aligned with Victorian ideals of a ladylike feminine behavior. Anything less than this standard clearly connoted insanity to male physicians at the time. Like the messages I was given as a child on how to properly display and express my sexuality, Victorian women were also forced into strict categories of behavior. Similar to my fear of being hypersexualized or viewed in a negative way, when these women went beyond the limits set for them, they were labeled insane. As patients, these women were then subjected to invasive and detrimental treatments in order to curb their sexual desires. Once their uncontrolled sexuality was ultimately cured and erased, male physicians believed these women were truly cured.